Good. Awesome. Cool. All right. Thanks everyone for your patience, just getting a bit of technical stuff going on. It's that interesting thing of trying to run a hybrid event and everyone's used to like presenting just over Teams where you just go bang, share desktop and then away you go, right? But it's this whole new world of being very inclusive with all our attendees, which is good. And it's good that we're experimenting with it here. So today I'm going to talk about a couple of different ways that we at Microsoft offer customers to connect Teams phone system to the PSTN, be that Operator Connect, which we announced and are launching pretty much nowish, calling plans, and then direct routing, and kind of really just talking you through how you can select your path to cloud voice and move away from legacy PBX assets that you've got. Because I think we've all recognized over the last 18 months dealing with the pandemic, a lot of organizations have reacted and kind of flipped on a dime to going home and still providing dial tone for people that need it. But now as you consider what the future looks like and those assets, like what needs to be fit for purpose for the organization. And we at Microsoft, from a hybrid work point of view, look at it as everything needs to be extremely flexible. And you can't do that when you've got legacy assets sitting in a data center somewhere that have contracts associated to them, end of life. You need something that's evergreen, and the cloud is really what enables that. So a bit about me. So I'm a senior customer success manager in Microsoft UK, and my sole purpose is really to help with deployment and adoption for Teams phone and calling, meetings, devices, anything that kind of really sits around that real-time comms aspect of Teams. And so we work with some of the largest UK organisations and around the world, kind of get beyond their POC and their pilot and all the way through to a kind of complete wall-to-wall production deployment, and away from some of those kind of real sort of legacy infrastructure assets. I've been in this space my entire career, basically all the way back to Office Communication Server 2007. And really what sparked my passion for this career was when I helped somebody get started with Office Communicator, and I showed them how easy it was to do a video call or share their desktop. And then I said, well, you can actually go and do this from home if you want. And she turned around with me and did a double take, and she's like, well, wait, but so I can actually still talk to people from home and get work done? And she's like, this has just changed my whole life. And I kind of like a light bulb went off in my head. I said, yeah, this is what I want to do, like career-wise for the rest of my life. And then from there, I really went on a whole journey with Microsoft through a range of different roles. I spent 10 years at Modality with Tom here, doing a lot of architecture and consulting with customers and kind of getting them off of things like Mitel and Avaya onto Link and then Skype for Business at the time. And then I spent a year at Accenture as well, doing really cross-cloud transformational advisory kind of stuff, which was actually gave me a really good interest into how Teams delivers a business outcome for employees, but then also the other aspects of the Microsoft Cloud, so how Azure and Dynamics 365 really paint into that from a customer engagement point of view as well. Through the years, I had the honor of being Microsoft MVP for about 5 or 6 years there and did a lot of this kind of stuff, basically. And you might have come to UC User Group in London back in the day when we first got that off the ground, about 2011, 2012 timeframe, which is good times. But now Microsoft have been there about 7 months now in this capacity, kind of really getting in deep with customers and helping them be successful with Teams Voice. I've married with a 2.5-year-old son there, who's a bit of a water baby, loves a good run along the beach. And as you can tell from the accent, originally from Australia. This is my second tour of duty in the UK. And so I've kind of got this weird hybrid accent going on now in terms of how I speak to. If I speak to my mates back home, they tell me I'm a bit of a pommy now. So it's always good fun. So I want to start by really level setting on why voice is important. And I think everybody in the room and online could attest to the fact that we've been in meetings so much over the last 18 months. It's just been like, personally, I get to the end of the day sometimes, I'm just exhausted from the number of meetings that I'm in. And we always need to schedule those, but really when it comes to kind of maintaining personal connection and building a lot of that clarity that we need to all get on the same page, nothing beats just like jumping on a quick call, right? And it's kind of replicating that thing that we would have done in the office where I just go over to somebody's desk and say, hey, can you just give me 5 minutes to work through this problem that we need to get to the end of, and then we can move on with the outcome. And kind of still being able to do that direct connection through calling is really important as we move through this kind of new phase of flexibility and hybrid work. And studies have shown that voice is really the human signal that creates the understanding and connection. Like, you can't get that across with just chat. the sentiment and the tone doesn't always work. So being able to pick up the phone is still important. And I think what we've observed at Microsoft as well is when it comes to engaging with customers, voice is still really, really important for that. You can get a lot of stuff done through web chat or through apps, but if you've got a bit of a curly, complex issue, then picking up the phone and speaking to somebody is just generally gets to the bottom of that really quickly. So in terms of providing that really flexible, capable solution in the cloud, we really do need like a modern solution that meets those needs that we have today. And from a Microsoft point of view, we look at it across 3 key pillars. So being able to split between the office and home with that hybrid workplace, having evolving calling scenarios that kind of expand beyond just being able to call somebody point to point, but then also doing interesting things like expanding on the customer engagement scenario. And then finally, the pressure on IT budgets and resources. I think as organizations and CIOs are sort of reflecting on this and planning for the future, they're looking at how can we meet the needs of the business, but then in a way that sees IT and the budget spend as being strategic and forward-thinking and innovative for the organization's needs. So from a Teams point of view, I'll step through just really the kind of building blocks of how all this comes together from a complete modern voice platform perspective. So at the very top there, we've got Microsoft Teams Phone, which is really our enterprise-grade calling capabilities, sort of like cloud PBX in the cloud kind of thing. So it's really the backbone of how numbers are getting assigned to people. People are making calls out to customers or partners or others, and all the sort of routing functionality that sits within in that. You could sort of imagine, the call manager that was in the rack in the data center, in the cloud there, in the backbone, distributed globally, highly available and resilient. And then as we step down through the connectivity here, through the center part there, this is where we start to talk about the paths and the options that you have to connect Teams Phone to the PSTN. So you can either go with Microsoft calling plans, where we perform the role as your operator, and we'll go into some depth on that in a couple of slides. Or then looking at how other operators that you have today or looking further afield to the market can provide that calling plan functionality for you for Teams Phone. And so that's either direct routing through either bringing your own carrier operator and either your on-prem infrastructure or the operator's hosted infrastructure, or looking at our new Operator Connect capability, where there's more of that seamless integration between the operator and Microsoft Teams. And then in terms of devices and endpoints, making sure that people have the right bit of kit in order to make and receive those calls. And I think what we're finding interesting is a lot of people have been working from home and they've been joining meetings and they've just been kind of shouting at their laptop because they've never really given like a good headset to use because they've just been in a home office or something, right? And so we're seeing a bit of an interest in what sort of devices do we need in the office as we start to adopt hybrid work. Do we need phones on desks? What sort of kit do we have in rooms? How do we use Teams rooms on Android, Windows, Surface Hub? Surface that up into the Teams meeting so that can be a kind of a fully inclusive participant in the use case. And then finally, down the right-hand side there, as you've seen represented out in the exhibition there, our kind of wide audience of partners and integrators that we've got there between software, partners that can help you get this started and running, and then all the way through to the carriers that bring it all to life from a telco point of view. Okay, so then diving into the 3 options that exist for Teams calling. It's about kind of giving you as much diversity and flexibility as you need based on what your history is and then what your future needs are as an organization as you start to become more flexible and diverse with the connectivity and needs as it relates to the voice. So from a direct routing point of view, this is really kind of looking at a very customizable way of doing this. And I'm sure you probably sat into a couple of sessions yesterday or today about direct routing and what it can do for you. But it's very much for organizations that have an investment in their existing voice backbone. They want to kind of maintain that. That's an asset that they have. And then how they can bring Teams into that. So as an example, you might have like call manager infrastructure all around the world, some ribbon SBCs, might be doing PSX for AD routing or something like that. And you want to bring that world into Teams Phone and connect that in and make the most of all of that. And so direct routing gives you that flexibility to kind of come as you are, essentially, with Teams Phone. Operator Connect is really about kind of getting started in a quick and easy way, but by leveraging your existing relationships with your telcos that you would have around the world, and then sort of really partnering with them to take on the management and responsibility of Teams Phone calling plans for you. And then finally, calling plans being a real rapid and simple way to get set up with Teams Phone, where you can take DDIs from us in the cloud, or port your own ones into there, and then get started with calling straight away very easily. And there's a few different ways you can consume and sort of sequence these as well, which I'll start to go through in a bit of detail, because it's not sort of either or on this. You can sort of mix and match and just sort of come together with a solution that works for you. So first up, we'll go into a bit of detail on direct routing, and this is really our perspective as Microsoft on it. And I really value that there's been a lot of diverse opinions on this conference on kind of how others have experienced this as well, but this is kind of just really our take on it. So you see from like a very sort of vanilla first glance point of view with the diagram there, we've got Teams Phone system sitting down the bottom in the cloud, connected over the internet, and then a certified SBC from kind of one of the varied vendors out there, a lot of that are represented here today, and some great sponsors. And then your phone number ranges that are obviously tied to those SBCs, and then a voice trunk into that SBC, which I would shudder if there's any ISDN connected to some of these SBCs, but yeah, there's some parts of the world that still have them, but obviously SIP into that PSTN provider. And from a greenfield point of view, this is like a pretty simplistic topology, but we know that this is, obviously there's going to be probably some PBXs in the mix that are being used today, which would be probably either sitting in a downstream topology, or they might be upstream, where then you've got the SBC sitting behind the PBX, and you sort of flip those around and take an approach based on what it is you're trying to achieve, whether that's starting with a POC of Teams Phone or moving into kind of full-blown production. And so what this really gives you also is that flexibility where you don't need to port anywhere, you can keep all your phone numbers, and then you can kind of bring in all the third-party solutions that you've got today. Like Tom was talking about in his session about contact centers, being able to connect those into Teams using a direct routing interface, and then you can kind of plug in that customer engagement aspect into Teams Phone. And then similarly for things like ATAs that you might have deployed out there for certain use cases, DECT phones that might then plug into a SIP translation to get into Teams. Direct routing really gives you that flexible backbone to be able to connect into Teams Phone. So key reasons why you would select direct routing: because it's so customizable, it allows you to really kind of like mix and match with the hardware that you have today or the approach that you want to take. And there's kind of really boundless options and paths that you can take on the sort of sequencing that you do here. So you may have sort of 10,000 people in EMEA, 10,000 in the US, 5,000 in APAC, and you've got SIP infrastructure in each of those regions, and you might be fully happy with what sits out there. And then so direct routing gives you that path to say, we're going to dip our toe in the water with Teams Phone, maybe peel off 100 numbers from a DDI range and route those across into the Teams SBC, and then light those up in Teams Phone. And so direct routing gives you that ability to phase the migration in a bit more of a sort of granular way, and really on the how risk appetite you are to be able to sort of go forward with Teams Phone. And so you could go on a kind of DDI by DDI range and move people across. And so you get like a lot of control because you've got that routing plane with the SBC to kind of pull people across as you see fit, which is kind of not so much as the case with calling plans. It's really good if you are a multinational company where you've got locations outside of where Microsoft provide calling plans. And obviously this is something that you can do as yourself and host the direct routing infrastructure, or you could then partner with somebody to then host that on your behalf. And there's a lot of direct routing as an infrastructure, as a service offers out there in the market today that will do that for you. And then similarly, as it relates to certain geographies, there's a lot of regulatory requirements around telephony in regions such as China or India and that, where the calls have to break out in the local PSTN in order to not do toll bypass and the like. So that's where direct routing would be the approach you would use into those certain jurisdictions. And then also things like if you've got certain sites that need real survivable PSTN, so that things like oil refineries, airports, that kind of thing, you could use direct routing potentially with a combination of survivable branch appliance to then still provide voice into those locations should they lose any connectivity over to the internet. Okay, so then moving in a bit to Operator Connect for Microsoft Teams. So really for this, just to level set where we fit it in, it's sort of like empowering the telco operators to really kind of work on an organization's behalf and kind of leverage the partnerships that you have there in order to kind of bring the best of both worlds of sort of Teams phone, but then their history and their strengths within the telco space. And so it's sort of like the next evolution of the SBC as a service type of model, where the operator gets a lot more control over how they sort of manage that on your behalf, because we've got a lot more simplified provisioning and management with the sort of telco breakout that the carrier has. You obviously save on the infrastructure purchase and management because you don't have to buy and deploy your own SBCs or configure or manage those yourself. That's all taken care of the telco. And you can feel confident this is reliable and it's got the support behind it because it is a partnership between the operator and Microsoft, providing the direct peering using Azure, so that there's this quasi all the way along, and there's API integration between us and the telco for the management aspect of it as well. So it's essentially like, I talk about like SBC as a service on steroids, really. So a few of the key reasons why you would select Operator Connect is if your organization had a mandate to go pure cloud and you said, we don't want any SBCs and any data centers anywhere, then Operator Connect would be the way to go for, because it then is all in the cloud, and it's all kind of connected cloud to cloud in the backbone, and it's a fully managed solution in partnership with the telco. The existing PSTN infrastructure you've got could continue to be used in the cloud. So as an example, if you've got a SIP trunk with a certain carrier, and then you sort of like port over as part of the contract into their cloud, so you're then sort of still leveraging the investment that you have with them as part of that infrastructure. The end-to-end number management is probably a lot cleaner within Teams Admin Center here with Operator Connect, because the telco's numbers are surfaced directly within TAC for you, so you can assign them to users. You can see which operators are assigned to which number ranges, and so it's a much smoother experience as opposed to SBC as a service, which is a little bit more kind of a bit more DIY in that sense. It's really good if you are also for a multinational company with locations outside of where we do calling plans again, so beyond those 28 countries that I'll talk about. And then finally, a use case I actually just learned about half an hour ago is if you're an organization that has kind of multi-geos with separate IT budgets, that maybe you couldn't consume calling plans or a direct routing infrastructure in that country. So say there's group IT essentially, but then you've got, say the US subsidiary is its own business and a different brand, then they couldn't consume that without some complex cross-charging of the IT budget. And so they'd need to then make their own investment into a way to connect Teams phone to the PSTN. Operator Connect could be a good way for them to go, because they could engage a local operator to give them phone numbers, connect into Teams phone, and then they'd be maybe ready to go there. You wouldn't have any complex cross-charging issues. Okay, so Operator Connect is really the kind of bulk of today's session. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail on how these are enhancements over direct routing and other aspects of how Teams phone is provided with PSTN today. So it really comes down to how we interconnect between the operator and Teams phone, how the numbers are provisioned, the management of that, the reporting that we offer, how we do a joint go-to-market with the telco operators, the real sort of operational aspects of all of that, and then finally the support that we offer, which is sort of much more robust in terms of the relationship between telco and Microsoft. So I'll go into these in a bit more detail now. So with the interconnection, it is a direct peering relationship between Teams and the operator's SBC using Azure peering service. So it's got end-to-end QoS built into it. So no longer are you having to do direct routing over the internet, which is sort of best effort, even if you're kind of a couple of milliseconds away from the local Microsoft POP, this is kind of quads back to back between us and the telco. And there's a lot of benefits for the operator here as well, because then they can see the network stats and then they can see reporting on their link. And so there's sort of less of this finger pointing that happens between your current sort of direct routing provider and Microsoft or your internal IT organization, because it's all just between Microsoft and the telco. And then with all of that, it creates a high confidence with the SLA for the organization. So you can see as an example here, between the operator, you've got kind of multiple tenants there connected into their PSTN. They've got their backbone of SBCs and applications, and then they can actually automate a lot of this because we surface an API for them to be able to kind of manage that tenant as a customer, but then also do some of their own interesting stuff in terms of how they would surface their voice apps and voice infrastructure into Teams. So what we see, just as a side note here, is a real opportunity for innovation with operators as part of this model. So they could surface more capability and software and apps on top of their Operator Connect service as it evolves and innovates. So just one thing to note there. So then with the numbers, the way that this is provisioned is it can either be uploaded using the API that we offer or via kind of like a manual upload through the portal. And then those can be then like displayed and assigned directly within the Teams Admin Center to tenants. So it's a lot simpler to manage all that DDI side of things. And then also what's really good about this is from a moves, adds and changes perspective, it's a lot simpler to do this because it's either available in the portal or you can do it through scripting and PowerShell. So it really just provide a very scalable platform for operators to take advantage of. From a management point of view, it's a lot simpler to grant access to the telco for the management of calling, which previously in the bottom bit they'd say there's no need to kind of get additional special permissions into the tenant or any delegated admin privileges to manage calling. That's all built in by default into the service that Operator Connect provides. And then customers can then segregate access by the region, geography, or calling areas by operator. So when you go into TAC, into the operators segment here of voice, you can then see which ones you've got set up per region, and then you can segregate those accordingly with various ranges that you've got and partnerships with the telcos. As it relates to go-to-market, so this is very much enables the telco and Microsoft to partner and form a much closer relationship so that it's a lot easier for them to be discovered by the geography and capability through Teams Admin Center. And it's a way simpler setup journey for organizations to do this through TAC as opposed to kind of calling up the operator, getting their SBC as a service sort of spiel and then kind of going through all that capability. It's all there right in TAC, so it's a lot easier to surface a partner solution through that. And because this is a program, there's a lot more confidence and rigor built around it, whereas direct routing is just a method of connecting to the PSTN. It's not a formal program that has a lot of support and kind of rigor around it. So this is a bit of a big table, but I'll go through these just to give you a flavour of sort of how Operator Connect and direct routing compare. So I touched on there how direct routing is really just its core functionality, right? It's bringing voice trunks into Teams Phone, but with Operator Connect, it's a much more programmatic approach to be able to have that partnership with the telco and we have that ongoing relationship with them where it is a platform for innovation. The interconnection, as I said, doesn't rely on just TLS and SRTP over internet. The operators do need to have Azure peering service set up with us to provide that voice backbone, which has obviously SLAs assigned to it and is a much kind of more reliable connectivity into Teams Phone. The number provisioning is a lot easier, obviously, through the APIs, so it gives that ability to automate a lot of that, which isn't a bit easier that from a direct routing point of view, where customer account needs to do admin on behalf for executing the PowerShell to do the number provisioning. And then other things like some of the data sharing here, so being able to surface up CQD, CDR data to the operator through the APIs, can be done in a much more aggregated way rather than having to do it on a tenant by tenant basis using delegated access. So you can kind of see how we looked at direct routing and then said we need to kind of supercharge this and really kind of allow carriers to form a much stronger partnership with Microsoft, but then also empower customers to have a much better experience as it relates to assigning DDIs and then managing the entire solution. So then beyond Operator Connect, we are also launching Operator Connect conferencing. So if you've been in this space long enough, you might remember the concept of third-party audio conferencing providers back in the kind of Link days, which was 3 operators globally that were able to offer dial-in into Link Online meetings in the cloud, which then became Skype for Business Online, and the rest is history. But what happened there was that really sort of leveraging the relationship you had with those partners to bring their audio into Microsoft at the time, and you would take advantage of their rates and the relationship and the service that they offered, because some had like a white glove experience where you could press *0 to get straight through to a customer service agent and that sort of thing. Is essentially taking on the kind of the next evolution of that experience within Microsoft Teams through Operator Connect conferencing. And so there'll be a variety of operators that will offer this once it launches. So there's 6 currently on the public website that will be supported to be able to do this. And it will mean that you can utilize their numbers that will have kind of much greater geographic reach, or kind of much sort of negotiated rates that you might be able to offer with them depending on the volume of minutes that you do on a monthly basis, and just gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of offering audio conferencing, both dial in and dial back as well, because we know a lot of organizations from a legacy point of view have been out sort of joining to a web conference and then getting it to dial them back, if they've got sort of poor bandwidth at home or something like that. So we know that's sort of still a bit of a habit that people do. And so being able to offer that through Operator Connect conferencing when you've got a high volume of minutes that you do is a good stepping stone to take into kind of going full Teams only for voice and meetings. And because it's part of the Operator Connect program, you can feel confident that we've got the reliability and support built around all of that as you start to make investments and make that transition over to full voice in the cloud. So definitely keep an eye on this. There'll be more to share in the coming weeks around Operator Connect conferencing, and then also there'll be more operators coming into the platform as well to take advantage of. Okay, so shifting gears a bit now into Microsoft calling plans and what this provides for you. So it's all about Microsoft being your carrier essentially, and having all of your voice and meetings and conferencing capabilities hosted by Microsoft in Microsoft 365. And to do this, we kind of procure and assign phone numbers directly within your tenant for users in a couple of minutes. It's literally click, click, click. Here's the DDIs you need in the locations that you need, and away you go, assign them to users, and you're off and running. And this is really good, and I'll go to some detail in the next slide, but about if your organization wanted to rapidly get to native cloud as quickly as possible, then Microsoft calling plans are a good way to go. And you've got that sort of single provider that's doing all the voice for you. We obviously support number porting as part of that, E911 based on kind of legal obligations of geos that have that, and then full local long distance international calling that you need. I think Jay Wynn had a good session on this actually yesterday, where he gave some more detail into what calling plans can offer. But essentially there's a number of different flavors where users can have a pool of minutes that they have each month for domestic and international calling, and those are pooled at a tenant level. Or you can utilize consumption billing with communication credits to just kind of pull down on a balance as you need and make calls that way. But this is really where Operator Connect comes into it as well. We've got that flexibility to go, hey, actually we've got relationships with these carriers, let's see what they can offer, and then compare with what Microsoft calling plans can offer you. So with the 28 geos that we've got this today, it sort of gives you that flexibility to go, hey, well, we've got people based in Germany as an example, and maybe a couple of offices, but sort of small. There's no requirement for infrastructure. Microsoft calling plans could be a good fit for criteria like that. So a few key reasons why you would select this. It's really good to set up if you don't want to set up any of that additional infrastructure, SBCs. It's also good where if you do have all that infrastructure, say you've got a very diverse, enhanced sort of global voice backbone, it's not easy to then connect that into Teams overnight, right? Like you've got to go through a lot of planning and change control in order to connect those SBCs in. But if you wanted to really test out Teams Phone and the functionality that it offers to people, then spinning up some calling plans in the cloud, giving those people some DDIs and letting them test it out is a really great way of just seeing how it fits with your organization. This is good if assigning new DDIs is an option as well. We've got a couple of customers I'm working with now that as part of their sort of post-pandemic action, they're saying, hey, like we don't need these old DDIs anymore. We're actually just going to grab new DDIs from Microsoft and then just start afresh in the cloud. So they're actually walking away from all their legacy infrastructure, which is brave, but like really bold, and I think a good way to look at things as well, where they're sort of reinventing themselves as it relates to voice. It's good because it's like an all-in-one solution as well. So there's a lot of simplicity built into that. You don't have to worry about SBC infrastructure. You like rely on us as your carrier to then do the kind of interconnect into the PSTN, and it's a full born in the cloud solution. So as we start to wrap up here, I want to kind of look at the 3 key takeaways of selecting your path for Teams Phone. So thinking about direct routing, it's really good when you need the most flexibility and control. Like you've got a very diverse, complex infrastructure, and you need to go step by step through that journey and kind of pick off offices or data centers or geos at a time, and then kind of really go softly utilizing direct routing. Operator Connect is really where you would say, okay, well, we want to do that, but we've got relationships with these carriers. We trust them. We have a good ongoing partnership commercially with them, and we want them to take on that responsibility or maintain it for us, because a lot of carriers manage on-premises infrastructure today, or contact centers, trunks, WAN links, that kind of thing, and you want to kind of continue that partnership and help them manage the Teams Phone side of things as well. So Operator Connect being the kind of good way to go there. And then finally, calling plans are when your requirements are a little bit more simple, or your migration criteria is a little less complex. And you're all in on the cloud. That's kind of the way the CIO said we're going to go. And you have people available in those 28 markets. That would be a great way to go. And then I want to also add here is that with selecting these paths, you don't have to go like, oh, we can only go direct routing, or we can only go calling plans. You can mix and match a lot of these, So you could have people in the US and the UK on Microsoft calling plans, or you could have direct routing in 6 different countries across Europe, or you could have Operator Connect in Japan or Singapore or something like that, and then kind of mix and match them all together based on your needs. And you don't have to stay there once you get there as well. So you could go direct routing today, but then port your numbers into calling plan next year, or vice versa, and you can kind of switch around as you need to. And a lot of the customers I'm working with now are taking that approach. They're saying, we're going to start with calling plans, but then once our SBC infrastructure is set up to configure with direct routing into Teams Phone, then we're going to switch those calling plan users back to direct routing, because we've got that investment into that infrastructure. Cool. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Ready? I'll get it for it.
Hello. Okay. With the advent of Operator Connect, Justin, do you think Microsoft's going to remain committed to investing in calling plans? It's been slow traditionally to roll out calling plans to different countries. I called it like 2 years ago. I thought Microsoft would back out the calling plan space, but they've stuck to it. With the advent of Operator Connect, do you think there's a commitment there still, and we'll continue to see other countries added to calling plans?
Yeah, there's definitely still a commitment to calling plans. We want to continue to offer that pure cloud with Microsoft capability as it relates to modern communications. And so you will continue to see some investment into that. I can't really comment on geography expansion, but it's not something that we plan to walk back from or deprecate.
Yeah, I asked because you had it on the board there, the benefits of each, and both of them were tagged as being simple and easy to deploy. So when push comes to shove and the Operator Connect model is quite mature in like 24 months' time, there's lots of carriers in there, hopefully. I don't see how calling plans will ever be a compete in terms of cost. I'd like to think that carriers will always offer a cheaper and hopefully more flexible service. So I don't know, it'd be interesting to see how it pans out. I was just conscious of whether Microsoft would be committed going forward still with that.
Yeah, and I think it would come on a case-by-case basis of sort of organisations that are sort of taken that path and sort of what the longer term looks like for them as well. But we still see ourselves as a strategic partner in the telco space for those customers. And I think it's all about just choice, innovation, and competition as well.
Yeah, thanks. Ask a question. I won't throw it.
Brave.
Anyone else? Does anyone on the call have questions? Raise your hand and we'll unmute you.
Justin, are you seeing people, like in your customer base, are you seeing people mix and match? Because it comes up quite a lot as an option, but do people tend to stick to one or the other, or are they actually mixing and matching in real life?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing some mix and match. Yeah, I had one organisation that have gone direct routing wall to wall, except they can't get their SIP trunks in Hungary. So they've gone calling plans in Hungary for that purpose. And they sort of then say, okay, we'll manage that estate going forward in that way.
Cool.
So thank you very much for our virtual attendees. So see you in the next session. Take care, take a break. Bye.